Our next speaker is the founder and managing director of Doreo Partners, which is an investing firm that focuses on the African agricultural sector. So his talk is titled, How to Create 10 Million Commercial Farmers by 2030. Please help me give a huge round of applause for Kola Masha.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much, Zainab. I think we'll pause for a second while we make sure my slides come up. Okay. Good afternoon again. So, once again, my name is Kola Masha, and today we're going to be talking about how to create 10 million commercial farmers in Nigeria by 2030. Next slide, please. So the first question is, why do we need to create 10 million commercial farmers? Well, the fact of the matter is, in Nigeria today, we have a very serious challenge. And that is a challenge around spiraling youth unemployment. How many of you in the audience have a friend, a relative, a child of a friend who's spent 4 or 5 years struggling through university and maybe has been out for a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years without any hope of finding a job? One too many. You know, I'm reminded of, there was a large multinational a few years ago that was recruiting for 15 jobs, 1-5. Anybody want to hazard a guess at how many people applied for those 15 jobs? 2 million? Who else? 15,000? 35? 95,000 people applied for 15 jobs. We are at an unprecedented state in Nigeria. Over the last 5 years, our unemployment rate has doubled. In 2007, it was 12.7%. Today, it's 24%. The youth unemployment is estimated at north of 60%. Next slide, please. This is why. Nigeria is one of the youngest countries in the world. We have 165 million people, half who are under the age of 19. Every year in Nigeria, 4 million youth go out into the workforce. In the next 10 years, that's 40 million. That's a population of Kenya, equal to the population of Tanzania, almost equal to the population of South Africa. And those are just jobs we have to create in the next 10 years alone. One can imagine that all these young people coming out into the workforce must, without finding viable opportunities, must have some impact. Next slide. This is the impact that we are seeing. From 1990 to 2000, there were 16 million youth that came out in the workforce, with only a tiny fraction able to find a job. From 2000 to 2010, 22 million youth came out into the workforce, with an even smaller percentage able to find a job. Now, some of those 22 million youth, unfortunately, because they have nothing to do and nothing to lose, have become very desperate. You know, let's think about it. In 1995, had you ever heard of Niger Delta crisis? In 2000, had you ever heard of Jos crisis? In 2005, had you heard of Boko Haram? Now, this is a challenge, but what is the solution? Next slide. Agriculture. Nigeria's job creation engine. It's 40% of GDP. Tremendous growth potential, labor intensive, and relatively low skill. Next slide. But I'm sure many of you in the audience are asking the question, wait a minute, wait, aren't farmers poor? Why would a young person want to actually go and seek employment in a space where they are subject to a lifetime of poverty? Next slide. The truth of the matter is, you would be correct if you assumed that. In Nigeria today, farmers are poor. This is a gentleman. His name is Musa. He works in a community that I work in. And during the planting season, he wakes up every morning to prepare his 1 hectare of land that he got from his father. Does it diligently, exceptionally hard worker. But the profits that he's going to get from that 1 hectare are not going to lift Musa out of poverty. He faces insurmountable challenges. If he's lucky, maybe 20 kilometers, 30 kilometers from him, he'll find an agro dealer. But that agro dealer more than likely will sell him inferior products at ridiculously high prices because that agro dealer bought it from somebody, who bought it from somebody, who bought it from somebody, who bought it from somebody. In addition, Musa can't go into a bank and get a loan to buy those inputs. So he either doesn't buy them or he finds a loan shark that will charge him 50, 60, sometimes 70% interest on his loan. And finally, after toiling for months on his 1 hectare, and he gets a tiny yield because he couldn't get inputs, maybe he didn't know how to apply them properly, he's going to get about 20% to 30% of the production that a similar farmer, just like him, would get in India, Thailand, Vietnam. And that small yield that Musa will get, he's then going to go out and try to market that in a marketplace where he has no power, very weak position, and gets taken advantage of by middlemen. So, of course, Musa is going to be poor. Because fundamentally, all of those challenges stem from one key issue. He has low economies of scale, inability to access what he needs when he needs it at prices that will keep him profitable. But the fact of the matter is, next slide, if we go back, if we had the luxury to get in a time machine and go back to the US about 100 years ago, farmers there were poor as well. Very poor, actually. Next slide. But they were able to form very strong farmer organizations that provided them those economies of scale, those high economies of scale, to lift themselves out of poverty, become profitable businesses, and grow. Now, what did they need to create those strong farmer organizations? Well, 3 very important things to get to scale. The first are committed leaders at the grassroots level, able to mobilize their fellow farmers together, to work together towards a single cause. The second thing they needed was professional management, because running a farmer organization, coordinating thousands of metric tons of inputs, millions of metric tons sometimes of outputs, is a very tough job, and you have to do it efficiently and effectively. And the final piece is investment. These farmers came together and took what little income they had, and they invested them into these farmer organizations to get them to scale. Now, I've had the pleasure to work in rural communities all across Nigeria for many years, and I've met many committed leaders. But what they constantly lack is that professional management and that investment to scale. Next slide. So that's why we've invested in a model we call an agricultural franchise. Because at an agricultural franchise, what that does, it's a way in which we can bring those economies of scale to small, poor farmers, millions of them, across Nigeria. How does it work? Can you go back, please? Thank you. How does it work? Well, as a typical franchise model, we go out and we find a committed leader, an individual that we believe has the requisite characteristics to be a strong leader of a grassroots farmer organization. We work with them to build together other farmers, small farmers, that have similar value systems and, most importantly, that they trust. And that entity we call a trust group. And that trust group becomes the franchisee. And then we are the franchisor. And as the franchisor, we deliver services to that franchisee to ensure that they are profitable in a private sector, sustainable way. Next slide, please. What are those services? They fall into 4 buckets. The first, training and development. Under training and development, we ensure that these farmers go through 3 key modules. The first is organizational skills. You have to work with the groups, the trust groups, to ensure that they understand how to work effectively and be a productive organization. The second is business skills. You're taking farmers that have, for decades, centuries, practiced a subsistence lifestyle, and you have to migrate them from a subsistence mentality to a commercial mentality. And the third, and most important, is agricultural skills. Teach them how to become better farmers, how to move their yields from a tiny 1.5 tons per hectare to 4, 5, 6 metric tons per hectare. The second piece is credit. Nobody is financing small farmers. And without credit, nothing happens. That farmer needs $500 per hectare to produce maize at best practice rates. You're asking somebody that's making $1 a day to somehow miraculously come up with $500 in cash. It's not going to happen. So that is the second piece. And we've been able to come up with a model we call our 7 levels of risk mitigation that ensures that every dollar I give a farmer, I'm practically guaranteed that I'm going to get that dollar back plus interest. The third step is input services. And that's where that $500, we deliver the equivalent of that $500 in services. An integrated best practice that ensures that this farmer is able to get optimum yields. Now, how does this input package work? Well, we're pretty proud of it, I have to be honest. It's complete end-to-end. We start with a farm analysis, where our team goes out, we map the farmer's field, so we know exactly the size of that farmer's field. We don't give a farmer that has 0.4 hectares, 0.6 hectares, or 0.8 hectares the same inputs. No, they're tailored to the specific size of that farmer's field to optimize their return on investment. The second thing we do in analysis is soil analysis. So we know exactly what inputs that farmer needs to optimize his returns. After that, we have contract tractor providers that come in and prepare the land. You saw Musa there working hard on his farm. It'll take him 10 days to prepare the land the way you saw him doing it. We can prepare his land in 1 hour. After that, we provide tailored inputs, seed, fertilizer, crop protection products to ensure that they're at optimal levels. On the fertilizer side, for example, our farmers use 25 times more fertilizer per hectare than the average farmer in Nigeria. Then comes the harvest, where we, side by side, we're with the farmers during the process of harvesting, provide them the bags, the thread, and the needle they use to sew their bags at the end of the season. So complete end-to-end input delivery service. The final service is output service. So the farmer elects to market a certain portion of their produce through us. We take physical possession of that, store it effectively to mitigate against post-harvest losses. We streamline the supply chain, work with large end buyers to ensure that these farmers get the best prices for their produce. So in a nutshell, in a private sector driven way, we've created a value proposition for small farmers where we're able to, first, get them the credit they need. Second, the high quality, low cost inputs required to be successful. Third, the training, knowledge, and know-how to optimize their yields. And finally, good prices for their products. Next slide. And this is the impact. We have created profitable, small commercial farmers. The farmer on the left is a Babangona farmer. Doubled their income in 3 months. The picture on the right is a farmer in the same community, just a few hundred meters away, picture taken exact same day, but that's what your normal maize field looks like in Nigeria. While the picture on the left there, a Babangona farm, I've shown to people and they can't believe it's a smallholder farmer's field. They think I took that in Iowa or Kansas or somewhere else. Because that person, the Babangona farmer, is going to get 4 tons per hectare, while the regular farmer is going to get 1.5 tons. Next slide. So bringing it back to the goal, 10 million commercial farmers by 2030. The truth of the matter is I wish I could do more, but I think 10 million, quite frankly, is a big enough challenge in and of itself. But that leaves another 70 million, a total of 80 million young people who will be coming out into the workforce from 2010 to 2030. And I ask you, my friends, if approximately 38 million young people coming out into the workforce, struggling to find jobs from 1990 to 2010, created Niger Delta crisis, Jos crisis, Boko Haram, what is 80 million coming out from 2010 to 2030 going to do? Thank you very much.